All right. Thank you, everybody. Everyone who's here deserves a gold star. 4 o'clock, last day. Thank you. We really appreciate it. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm Tom Hare from the PDMI, Chief Content Officer. Today is last session, and the last session of PDMI East features a who's who in data automation. And it's going to be really a great conversation. I know they've worked hard to prep it. Cordie and Kevin actually did a fireside chat at our first PDMI East back in 2019, which was great. And they've added David. And as I said about David at the start, he's going to bookend the show. He was in session 1, and now he's in session 10. So you know we're wrapping up. We'd like to thank PMT, Pacific Media Technologies, our sponsor for the education. And they have one more video to play for you.
We trust PMT because we know they're professionals. We've been working with PMT for over 20 years.
They're the most customer friendly, they're the most timely, the most accurate.
They are really wonderful with their technology and the advancements of their technologies that they implement.
They treat us like we're the only client that they have.
Whatever we need, we know it's going to get done. So that's really important to us, that personal connection.
Pacific Media Technologies. Technology driven, quality guaranteed.
So again, thank you to PMT, and without further ado, Cordie DePascale of PDMieast 360 will take you through the next hour.
Yeah, I think so. Fire us up.
All right. Am I coming through okay? All right. So, Pascal, I'm Chief Strategy Officer for Premium Media 360. I also design product for Premium Media 360. And we're here today to talk about data automation in our space, in direct response. So I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit through. That's us. We look great.
Wow. Hey. Well, you know, the good news is I was here earlier and people still showed up. So,
yeah,
you know.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the key, right? So, you know, the need for automation, I think, you know, some of the things that Kevin and David and I have been talking about and kind of musing on is, you know, speed, accuracy, staffing, profitability. And what are all of those things? We're going to dig in on those. You know, I think the first things first is, you know, David, from your perspective in all the myriad of data sources and different things, you know, let's talk a little bit about speed and what it means to, you know, get the data in a shape where it can be used inside of your environment, you know, using CoreDirect.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that has changed drastically in the last, there is a consistent acceleration of questions and a consistent acceleration in the need to understand, you know, what happened, you know, basically sometimes like hours ago, right? And along, over time, the number of sources that we're getting data from, like, you know, you used to have a call center, and then you had a call center and a website, right? And we all know now you got a call center and a website and 3 web platforms, and you've got another website over here that's doing full, not just a landing page, and that's on Shopify, and there's other things over here on another web platform. So all of those things coming together, it took the process of getting data into one place in order to understand what's happened for the previous day or the previous week, to be able to answer questions for clients or for executives if you're an internal agency, and just took it and did this, right? Right. And so now, what we've been doing, at least at Bluewater, is figuring out ways to push it back together, right? Because this is untenable, because as it got wider, right, we got more questions from executive leadership with our brands. Again, if you're it's shocking how many times someone walks into a meeting and they say, "Hey, we didn't think about this. We didn't think about this. What's the answer?"
Right.
And if you're still trying to smush all this data together from yesterday to give that answer, you've got to figure out ways to get in there faster so that you can answer these questions in a timely fashion, right, and so that you can obviously optimize as well.
Right. And that also, you know, comes across in terms of accuracy. I mean, if you've got hordes of people trying to put all this data together and rekey it from different sources, you know, that has to have an impact on your environment. So
that's when your leadership came to us 5-6 years ago and was like, "Hey, we think we can take these logs and automate the process." I was like, "Do I have to sign in blood or like?"
Yeah, no, and what, you know, Premium Media 360 did, you know, that many years ago was to look at, you know, all of the myriad of stations that are sending airtimes out. So that's our base product, right? We call it Clear Logs. What it does is it transposes the data coming out of the stations into formats that your systems can ingest. What does that mean? That means that CoreDirect has a format that we support, and, you know, we'll send the data through so that David can get it into the system without having users rekey things. The accuracy, the veracity of the data is it's straight from the station's database. It's not coming out and being rekeyed or, you know, looked at on a document stand from a PDF to keyboard to screen. We're transposing all that data on the fly. You know, think about it. If you're on a buy and you're doing 207 markets, you know, 5-7 stations deep, that's a lot of data entry to do. And, you know, I think kind of that tees up into staffing. You know, how does that work for, you know, even on the CoreDirect side, or, you know, managed service, or on the Bluewater side, how do you staff for that? I mean, you know, today's world, you know, entry-level people have to be enticed to want to do that kind of work. Yeah. So how does that work for you?
I think the interesting thing that, you know, when we compare the performance marketing side of the house compared to the general marketing generally knock out a buy, you get an invoice in at the end of the month, you do a post against again, and you move on.
Sounds dreamy.
We see every spot 4 times. You get a pre-log in. We verification services from people like BVS that in the moment did it run. You get a post log in. You get a station invoice record in for the same spot. So the amount of data that's processed by the performance media space is dramatically different than what the general side does, and the timeliness of it. And, you know, we'll get into this with some of it. Even the fact that log times are summarized to the minute, and like the verification guys send it down to the second level. Like minute level stuff isn't granular enough anymore. They need it second by second. And to your point, it's actionable. You know, if you're in a general buy, you're on the hook for a couple of weeks before you can make a change. For a DR buy, you're pulling levers every day, making decisions based on what just happened. So the amount of data that's processed is just dramatically different in the general world. So tools like PM360 and empowering buyers to be able to make those decisions in the moment, as opposed to saying, I've got to get a bunch of hands-on keyboards in Excel to cobble this together to figure out what just happened. Like it can't work that way anymore.
And you said it, hands-on keyboards is becoming increasingly more difficult to staff for from the agency side. People out of college, they just don't, those jobs are becoming less and less acceptable, right? And whether that's because people are touchy, or whether that's because student debt is really high right now, it doesn't really matter what it is, it's just the truth. So those are high turnover positions. People tend to leave at the most inopportune times. So having these types of, you know, staffing solutions ultimately, or these types of solutions help you reduce that head count, right, so that you're not having to, it basically increases your flexibility, either again as an agency or as an internal agency, which leads to the last thing, which is profitability, and this is something that for, at least on the Bluewater side, it's like our margins, they keep getting crushed, right? Like you're getting hit from every side. You're getting hit from staffing costs going up. You're getting hit from your brands looking for more discounts on media. You know, clients are reducing their budgets at times, especially now kind of heading into a little bit of an economic headwind. So all of these things together, the why kind of ends up, you have to do this to be competitive in the end.
Right. And you know, look, I think from a staffing perspective, you know, I talked about this with Kevin on the fireside chat that we did, you know, a year or two ago, and you think about it, and, you know, when we came into the market, data entry was a thing for us because the automation didn't exist. You know, now today everybody's, you know, working off of their cell phones, and so everything that you get is immediate return, right? So expectation of kids coming out of college, like my own kid, she took a data entry job and hated it. She couldn't stand it. She's like, Dad, what is this? You know, like, why am I punching data in from one source to another? Should be using your software to do that. And I'm like, well, you know, you're not in my industry, so you know, can't solve that for you, kid. But
zip it.
Zip it, right? But the point is, it's tough to retain that talent. And these are, you know, highly educated kids that spent their parents' money on that education.
Well, they're educated kids.
Well, some of them are more educated than others, but which gets us into, you know, this, right? How the world is changing, the number of networks, the number of stations, channels, right? It's not just about, you know, were on traditional television. Now it's inclusive of CTV, OTT, however you want to look at it. It all is added together in this whole mix. And I think, Kevin, how do you guys?
Yeah, I mean, from our side, again, the world is changing rapidly. And so even CoreMedia, we got purchased last year by a DSP called Simplify. And that's kind of broadened our horizons a bit, where we're doing a lot more with CTV. But even if you look at the linear side of the house, which of still probably about 80% of the billings that run through us is linear TV, the amount of opportunities to get your message out there is just dramatically increasing. The number of cable networks, all the little diginets and all of the other ways that you can go and buy linear today is dramatic. There's just so many more of them than there ever was. So the decision making that needs to happen against that is just increasing. So for groups like you say, hey, give a buyer, they've got a list of networks for 10 networks that I'm managing. There is no more 10 networks. You've got to manage much more than that because there's just so many more of them. So just from your side of the desk, how do you see the expansion of all these brand new cable nets that no one even heard of a year ago that all of a sudden now have to become an opportunity for you to get your message out there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I do feel to some degree this has been happening for like 10 years now, right? Between the onset of, obviously network expansion from the national cable level, the addition of the unwired network groups, and now we're kind of even getting past that to diginets. We're working with aggregators now. We're working with all of these different subsets of like ways to be on television or ways to be on CTV. It almost feels a little bit like I'm used to it at this point. But again, the tools that we need are changing. And that's one of the things that Core has started to help us with. And it's a preview about what we'll talk about a little bit later, but they've started to be able to enact like almost real-time data feeds to us that populate in our own systems and our own databases so that we're able to tear that data apart and then use it to create automations and reports that help drive our business forward. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing. I hate to say it's an entirely new thing because I feel like it's been something we've been dealing with for many years. But these additional tools that we have at our agency from you guys have really, they've helped us bridge that gap and make some of the transition a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference too in that attribution is real time now. It's not, again, let's wait and do a report at the end of the week and get it out to clients. They're making those decisions instantly. So even the fact that we would go out and recharge a client's analytics data set every night isn't enough. And so we've started working with clients to start saying, we'll give you real-time access to add edits, deletes within the system and let you get after it in real time. And we've always looked at some of that stuff before, like, is anyone really doing it? Like, if I'm feeding in log times at 3 p.m. and it's 4 p.m. now, is anyone really doing anything with that 3 p.m. log time?
Yeah, we do.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah, we do.
And so we fought the fight for a long time saying like, hey, generally we would recharge essentially yesterday and say, okay, every day you're looking at yesterday's activity. But yesterday isn't fast enough anymore. And so it made us change a lot of the tools and the ways that we go out and bring data to clients, just allowing them to get access to that. And I think some of that came again from our acquisition from Simplify, that in the CTV, OTT world, you're used to being able to pull levers and change things in the moment for 15 minutes from now. And in the linear world, it hasn't been that way, but it's getting to be that way. And so being able to provide those tools to the agency so that they can do those things just makes us more relevant to kind of what they're doing every day.
Well, that time sensitivity also, it's analogous to the digital media space, which I think everyone's used to at this point. I mean, so much of the digital media space is managed in-house by in-house groups, in-house agencies. And that's kind of their core set of knowledge, right? They're used to the impacts that for the most part, that you can make in real time, right? But at least understanding what's happening in a more real-time space. I've always thought buying TV via direct response buying methodologies is more analogous to digital media buying, right? Than people like to admit, right? Because we can make changes and optimizations, and we have a lot of control over those things. Yeah. But especially in time-sensitive campaigns, things that have limited seasons, limited windows around holidays, that's when that intraday data starts to become relevant because you've got such a short period to optimize and to win that every, half day actually does matter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, a question that I have for that is, do you find, we have about 3,000 stations and DigiNets sending airtimes through our system into
Right.
agencies. So do you find that a lot of the stations and the sellers are sending, whether it's cable or local, are sending in real time or throughout the day versus, prior night?
No, we don't get station data that fast from the stations. It's actually funny. We get the thing I find that's funny is that we actually get our data from like our OTT providers slower than we get them from our like offline stations, which I think is funny. Yeah. But no, we're not getting intraday data from them. But what we can do is look at we can use detection services like from BVS, from Nielsen, from AdSphere. Like all those detection services are near real time, and they can give us insights into kind of where things are hitting. The other thing too is because of our integration with you guys,
Right.
our log data is way more accurate than it used to be, like way more accurate. It's up to speed a lot faster, and we can use that data more to understand, okay, we've had this pre-logged for the day. We're seeing responses come in around these windows now.
Right.
Oh, it looks like this stuff hit, or oh, it looks like some of these things didn't hit. It helps to understand how it's how progressing. For always on campaigns, right, for your always on products, it's not as big a deal, that intraday stuff, but again, for that time sensitive, season specific, the things that are happening like really fast, like during like an annual enrollment period for Medicare, like, that's the kind of time where that information really, really matters.
Right. Yeah, and I think to, Premium Media 360's mission, I mean, we want, broadcast media to perform at digital speed. So whatever you guys need for us to deliver that data from our stations and broadcasters, we'll enable it. So,
Yep.
I think the important thing for everybody in the room to understand is, we're not automating to, replace people. We're automating to take away some of the menial jobs and elevate those people to roles where they can actually make decisions off of the data without having to go through the effort of, putting it all together, as David said. So,
Well, it goes back to curiosity.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I'm always trying to breed within our team from a data and analytics position at Bluewater is curiosity, right? Like, you have to be curious about what you're finding within the numbers, within the responses, from within the media choices and selections, because when you look at something and you say, well, why did that happen? That doesn't make sense. It's usually indicative of a problem or indicative of an opportunity to exploit. When it becomes difficult for someone to have that answer because they have to pull this information from over here and wait for it to come in from over here, and then this happens, and then a client calls, and then 3 hours later, the curiosity has died, right? The cat is dead. But then, but what ends up happening is that there's a miss, right? And a lack of rapid access to information, it kills curiosity, and curiosity is what kills finding optimization opportunities, and it's what kills client results. So, ultimately, these types of things, these types of data solutions, they do help you be better. I'm okay with replacing people, right? That's okay, because that's where the profitability comes into play. But at the same time, it's also going to make our clients better, which is going to increase profitability in the reverse way, because we're going to be able to make them more successful. We're going to be able to sell more product. We're able to connect more consumers with the products and services that are meaningful to them, right? And we're going to help move the industry forward.
Yeah, and I think even in here, I'm deciding, not compiling. Like, you want people thinking about what's happening, not thinking about how do I put all this junk together into Excel and glue it together in some way so that I can make some sense of it. And
I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's not. And having done the job, it's really, like, you spend all the time doing the work and the data entry, and then it's like, now it's time to analyze. No, I need to go to bed. So, sorry, I'm not going to do the work. Next day I'll do it, right? So I think that's kind of the, the reason for being for us is to make that speed and veracity happen against the data, so that you're not, looking at something that isn't a source of truth. If it's coming from the station's traffic system directly, and that traffic system is going to be used for the invoicing as well, there's a level of truth to it, right? And that's, I think, the nice thing about what we have in our space and our industry is the veracity of data, the level of truth, and the trust is there. There's a trust equity built around TV that you kind of don't find with digital. And so, we can talk about that later on. I think we should probably hit that. And we certainly will be talking about ChatGPT a little bit too. So
We always have to talk about that?
yeah, we're not
Okay.
really, but
Okay, got it. Just
we
making
can.
sure.
So a little, sales pitch for Premium Media 360. I mean, just to kind of give you a sense of where our automation lives. Obviously, we started with clean, error-free airing logs. That's the basis, the foundation for our solutions. We also have in-flight reconciliation, which enables a buyer and a seller to collaborate on mistakes that can happen during a campaign. So if you're booking something horizontal, vertical, there's an error against it, we flag that. We partner with Core on that type of data, analysis and capability. And we also look at copy. We look at traffic instructions. Did you run the right creative? I mean, a lot of times the copy instructions are coming from PDF across to the sellers, and the sellers are rekeying that data. So that becomes a problem as well. We actually built a solution for it that we use is a document converter that sellers put on the front end of their traffic systems, and it feeds in, turns the copy from a PDF or Word or whatever into data that can be ingested into the seller traffic systems. And I'm happy to announce we stood up and are live with NBCU on our direct response ordering platform through Core. So buyers in Core Direct can now automate the process of sending the order to NBCU networks and not have the sales assistant, fat finger the buys into the system and you run the wrong stuff.
Or not get them.
Or not get them, right? So it's all auditable, trackable, and all that stuff. It's, we're not just solving automation on the buy side, we're also doing it on the sell side as well. So you have to be holistic in that, otherwise things start to break down at some point along the way when there's manual entry. Rounding it out, error-free invoice reporting, kind of the same concept for agencies that need to get their invoices in an EDI format or an electronic format. We also process data in that way as well, and have an invoice converter product that we are building with the help of Bluewater to automate digital invoicing, which happens to be a much bigger problem than broadcast invoicing because there are EDIs. So we're really happy about where we are with the products and who we're working with, and I'm looking forward to getting that stuff off the air. So that's my little in the middle interstitial pop-up kind of advertisement.
This stuff's been a big deal for us. We've saved a lot of staff hours leveraging your solutions from a log standpoint. I think I already touched a little bit on just the accuracy and the improvement, the speed to having that information in our system. But even, God bless this guy, because a long time ago, his business partner came to us. It's like I said, could we do this? Would you use it? We said yes. We did a bunch of demoing and trialing, and I basically shot the whole thing to heck and back. And then and they're like, we'll fix it. And I'm like, sure you will. And they found him, right? And he fixed it. So the tools that you guys have built have been really, really, really helpful. And we are really looking forward to that invoicing thing becoming a reality, because that's almost as bad as logs. The whole just invoicing, payments, AR process, being able to start to automate those things and remove some of the friction there is going to be really awesome.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the kudos. We have a really deep bench on our team of solid developers and QA and product people that actually enabled that. So it wasn't just me.
I know, but
there's a laundry list of folks that I can bring up.
The smart people.
The smart people behind me, exactly. So, David, you put this together, and in finding ways to automate things, where are there, there's obviously room for improvement. Products are never done. Where do you find, the best ways to automate, the way to get hands off, and have it all kind of, gel together inside of your environment today that we could do better? Like, where are some of the, the landmines that need to be kind of sussed out and, diffused, right, and turned into automation?
So, from our standpoint, we've invested a lot of time, energy, and the kind of money into thinking about how we can continue to automate the flow of data into our system, right? So we've leveraged off-the-shelf solutions like Premium Media 360. We've been working with Cordie to get more real-time data in, which we'll touch on a little bit. But I think, whether you're an agency, again, in-house, are there in-house agencies in here? Anyone? No? You are? Okay, cool. And I see other people that I know that are from other agencies. So whether you're in-house or whether you are more of a traditional ad agency, we are getting more data flows from our clients than ever before. When I started in this industry, everything was generally at least lightly customized to our format. So, Core has its own formats that things have to be in, right? And I would say probably like 75 or 80% of the data we got was pre-formatted for us to use out of the box, right? We were able to work with a in-house data team to kind of like get that all working. That was just part of the deal. One of the things that has happened is now I would say we touch about 85% of the data that comes in to our system and have to clean it up in some way before we can actually ingest and use it. That's a wild transition. So we've been working very hard to build systems to automate those processes. So that's, to me, I don't know, being able to do that and do it fast is difficult. And I think that is something that every agency should really be trying to figure out and how they can start to make those things moving, because we had a very hands-on approach when we started this, and we've tried to move to a more hands-off approach because it just wasn't gonna scale in any capacity without us finding new tools and new ways to be more nimble and to be smarter with how we handle those data flows when they come inbound.
And Kevin, you're seeing new formats come out now that...
Yeah, I mean, much of what we do now is the goes ins and goes outs. It's how do we feeding different types of things in and getting it in and making it actionable, and then making sure we can feed it back out. And it sounds corny, but like embracing core as our name. We are the core, and we want to be able to put things in and get it back out again. And we do our part of the thinking and move it on down the road for you guys to put your special sauce against all of this. So, I mean, that's a lot of what we're trying to do with our automation today.
Yeah, and it also increases data accuracy as well, which we'll touch on again in a little bit. But when you're hands-on, which is the easy way to go, it's like, all right, you take this, you put it in here, change this, tweak it, and dump it back out. It's easy, but there's a lot of room for error, and that's the other thing that as you start to get deeper into that automation workflow, that you're able to get those mistakes out of your workflow so that your data is cleaner when it goes inbound.
Right. Yeah, when you get to your 1,000th record of data entry, you kind of get a little fatigued. So.
Or 10,000.
Or 10,000. Yeah, as things have progressed since I was an assistant. All right, reporting. I think we always looked at it when I was at Core, right? Kevin and I would talk about it. Your end result is the most important thing. It's how you get there and whether or not it's accurate. That's kind of the key. So you design everything from the report backwards, right? And then you kind of figure out how to, automate things along the way. Talk a little bit about, your data strategy and how you, improve it and how you keep things going. I know we're a big part of that, on the Core side as well. But even internally, you guys have a lot of capabilities that you built bespoke to your environment.
So our in-house system that we've designed is called the IQ Suite. It's a series of tools that we've built that have helped the automated ingest of data, which we already talked about. Our BI platform called Insight IQ. We also have we have a attribution platform as well called Attribution IQ. It all kind of comes together. We also have some other products that we've developed to help clients answer questions that they have when they come to us, because to your point, you said you want to be the core. Well, we want to have a toolbox, right, where I can go in and say, okay, these are the questions that you want to answer for your brand. So whether those are metrics, whether those are sales metrics, whether they're response metrics, inbound, whether they're lead metrics, or even whether they are audience metrics or brand lift metrics. We want to have those tools to be able to selectively pull those things in and then create reporting that shows the performance that the client's looking for. I think originally in direct response, the performance was always just pretty much sales and leads, right? And we've kind of grown beyond that to kind of be more encompassing of understanding, everyone has a performance goal. We just have to make sure that we have the tools to be able to help them understand when they've reached that goal. And for us to be able to optimize against that goal. But for, in the reporting world, one of the things we've begun working on with Core, which is a more, basically a more real-time flow of data into our systems.
Yeah.
Because we started with sort of a daily dump to start to power all this, right? We would dump responses, we would dump buys, but you guys have been helping us.
Yeah, so from the software side of the house, we built a lot of reports, and we have a report writing tool, and then all these fancy things where you can add logos and graph, whatever. People said, all right, I need data to Excel. So then we do all these Excel exports or whatever, and then clients are saying, I just need data. Like, let's take Excel out of it. And so we started doing these nightly extracts and thinking, hey, it's the best thing ever. We're recharging everything they've got every night.
It was cool for like a few months.
And then say, hey, let's talk real time. And then we always say, well, what do you mean by real time? And they're like, no, like real time. And so then it gets into a whole level of technology to say, every time you commit a change on our side, we're going to let you know about that on your side. And so we've been doing a lot more of that with groups like Bluewater to be able to go in and say, in the moment this happened, you know about it as well on your data lake, and you can go in and do whatever you want with it. And so taking all of the buy data and the Premium Media 360 data and all of that stuff in Core, do some of our magic with it and put audience data and everything else against it, and then say, all right, go get it. And so that's been happening a lot more at agencies, and it's candidly surprising for us how quickly this type of stuff has happened. And we always thought some of maybe just the big powerhouse holding company level people would be doing these things, but it's not. It's people with data scientists and data teams are getting after this data daily, and groups like Bluewater are absolutely pushing us in the directions of get more data, more access to the data, and doing some great stuff with it.
Yeah, it's gonna sound really nerdy, but it's like fabulous, right? It's absolutely fabulous. When we saw that first dump in there from you guys, I was talking to our data engineer. I'm like, go to the bottom, go to the bottom. So we're like, when was the last record inserted? And he looked at it, it was like 10 minutes ago. I'm like, holy smokes, we're in, right? Because the amount of information and the amount of like automations and reports and the amount of things that we can do to shortcut the processes for our own internal teams, once we have access to that data, it goes from this to like this, right? Like at this point, like there's so many things that I actually want to do with the data that we've sort of recently enabled, is that we don't even have time, right? Like it's kind of crazy. But the point is that it helps us answer client questions faster, and it helps us be, again, better and faster for our clients, right? So being able to have that information, being able to because we have import processes that are baked in the core. We're getting more data from the Premium Media team. To be able to take that data, jumble it around, help our team go in and answer a question, and then push that information back in the core. It helps us overcome workflow shortcomings that we've had for years, that I'm sure that we're going to be able to find more time back for our teams to, again, be less pushy button and movie data, and then become more strategic and answer real client questions.
Yeah, and it's adding to your revenue potential as well, because now you're not employing hordes of people to do the job. You're using systems that will actually do it for you.
It's that double smush margin thing I was talking about,
Yes.
getting crunched from each side. So
Yeah, cool. All right. Garbage in, garbage out.
this one was mine. So as you guys are looking at this, if you guys are looking at taking on these types of automation processes, if you're talking with Cordie or you work with Core, it's really important to remember there are more in-house data teams than ever. I don't know where all these data people have come from, right? Like they've just appeared out of nowhere, which is great because it's going to further our industry, but there's a lot of bad data out there. And we have worked with a lot of relatively large companies that have been doing direct-to-consumer data or direct-to-consumer sales for years that have awful data quality. We've found things within our clients' data that have been wrong for many, many years. They had no idea, and they've been making bad decisions off of it forever. So it's really important that you find ways to inject data quality at every step, whether that's doing things like cross-referencing data, pulling it once, cross-referencing a second time, always checking things, adding checksums into your data flows so that things are being checked, before they move on to the next step. Because no matter what you do, there's probably going to be something that goes wrong because these flows continue to get more and more complex. And as you push changes and updates to your platforms, there's always going to be things that are funky. But this is something that's really important to consider as you consider taking on automation tasks within your agencies or your in-house agencies.
So in that, you know, and I get all that, and I can appreciate that as a propeller head, right? So for me, I can design something around that to build rules and algorithms that, you know, and look, we've done this together at Core, right? You know, to find the errors in the data before they become persistent and problematic. How do you see AI lending itself to that? I mean, I know everyone's been talking about ChatGPT and, you know, unstructured query language, which is fun, but in a practical sense, where do you see AI playing a role in that world?
See, I think it's going to happen faster than everyone thinks it's going to. I know a lot of people have sat up here. I've heard a couple people say, well, you know, it can do like a little bit, but you still have to be there to do all these things with it. Like, I agree. There has to be a human element to it, right? That's not going to go away. It's not like it's going to replace everyone entirely. But I think it is going to happen faster than everyone thinks it's going to. I think that it is going to be more prevalent on the creative side. I think it's going to be able to start to go in and find data quality issues within databases because it's going to be able to, you're going to be able to use that because as training data essentially, it's like, this is what the data should look like. Now go in there and find things that don't look right. And you still might have to cross-check some things, but but AI is going to be able to process and find those problems faster than any of us ever possibly can here. So right. I don't obviously know the answer, or I would be far richer and would be better looking. But the truth is, it's going to happen quick. And we're already seeing that on the BI side too, where you're able to start to ask free-form questions of certain tools, and it's able to look into the data right. and try and give you a response back, like, has my traffic to the website increased over the last 30 days, right, on average? Well, the system can go in and look at that and then read that as a question and start to answer those things. So that stuff will start to find its way into our tools eventually. We're not right. there yet, but I think it's going to happen quick, and I think it's going to make a positive impact.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, you know, at the end of the day, AI is a useful tool as long as there's an operator behind it kind of saying, yes, I agree with this, and let's move that forward. That's my perspective on it. And we look at it the same way, you know, our development team as well. I mean, Kevin, in your side, you know.
More so on the Simplify side of our house, where on the DSP, they're doing all kinds of campaign optimizations and everything. And it was, you know, machine learning before, and there was different names for it. Now it's AI, but like at some point you throw a bunch of data at something and it can think through things faster than a human being can. So the more data you can throw at some of that stuff, you know, it's just better decision making it can do. It can find things that humans can't because it can just weed through billions of rows of data quickly.
Yeah, so it looks like AI has a future in our space, so we just have to make sure that we're in control of it. Otherwise, you know, Terminator, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's on everybody's minds about AI.
I literally just saw that in my hotel room, in my room the other night. I was like, this movie's great.
Yeah. Relevant all over again.
Right, exactly. Cool, so I'm gonna open it up for questions.
Yeah, we are the speed bump to drinks right now.
Yeah,
so we know where we land.
Let's hit it. Let's get those cocktails going, guys.
Any questions out there in the audience? I'm already ahead of you. So there's
way to go, man.
I mean, the bar's open on the floor still.
This was the best session ever.
Questions? Anyone? All right, you're going to drink.
You bored them.
Everybody wants to drink, man.
You bored
them.
As
I said to another session, I said
always
they were great, but they couldn't have been that great.
Yeah.
You got to take her.
Okay. I won't be too long, but how did this sort of partnership come about? Like, what kind of need were you trying to fulfill from the client end or on your agency side that had this deal or, you know, partnership strike together, and how long did that evolution take for you guys to transcend this into multiple models across multiple clients?
Okay. You want me to take that?
Well,
I think for us on our side, you know, it took a few years to get it done. Like David said, you know, our founders came to a lot of different groups, myself included. I was at a different company. I was at MediaOcean, and you know, they had an idea. And the idea was a really solid, idea. It was the implementation of it that needed some extra resources and some extra brain power against it, which evolved into, we hired the right people, put the right people on the bus, so to speak. In the last, call it 3.5 years, we really saw a lot of progress. We rewrote our entire stack. We increased the speed and the performance of our application so that the data can come out more quickly. And I think that was what was enticing to not just, to David and Bluewater. I think it was also enticing to Core because it meant that there is a better way to get information out of Core Direct more quickly than, the way it had been done in the past. So, what did we do? We modernized our tech stack. We started to move toward a path of, we're fully Microsoft Azure based, and we take advantage of everything inside of that stack, and we also build our own, and then convert it into the Microsoft stack. Document conversion product originated as a Python script, which a lot of the AI stuff in today's world is based on Python. Well, we converted that into C# and .NET that we can support on our own with our own resources, and fewer resources on our side than you would think exist, right?
And we were kind of lucky too at Bluewater that your CEO came to us as early as he did.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not quite sure how he found me, to be honest with you. Maybe I don't
Stalking.
know. Like I said, he ruined the day. But the truth is, we've been lucky because we got involved very early in the development process of the core product that they have, and as we gave them lots of feedback, which again, it comes back to that whole, was this a good idea or not? But ultimately, it was valuable feedback because we obviously know really well how agencies work. That they took that feedback and ran with it. And it resulted in something that's really been great for us. It's obviously been great for other agencies,
Right.
but that built trust with them and with their team, with our team, that now I've had the freedom to be able to come to him and be like, hey, I had this idea, right? Would you be interested in seeing if there's a way and a path forward? And again, we've been lucky, especially with the invoices thing.
Yeah.
There looks like there's gonna be a path forward. So, we're lucky to be in a position to have a partner like you guys, like PDMI that is able to lean in and answer those questions. And then from our more in-house agency tools, those tools have been under development for years now. I'd say, some of them go back as many as 3 years at this point. And a lot of that came out of just client needs, like you're trying to see where it's going, or you see that with like the data inbound, with the data automation pieces, right? Like we knew that we could not have people doing all of that work. It was not going to scale. It wasn't going to be sustainable from a cost standpoint either. So we started to move in those directions just almost out of necessity.
And with Core, we're family, so it's
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right. How about a round of applause for our guys here?